Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the private Western central bank, the corrupt politicians, the fake media, big tech companies, everything that they're trying to do in regards to pushing this great reset, pushing climate change, no one's buying it. Remember, their entire mission was to have a cover story. This way, the people of the countries would be busy with the cover story. It could have been a war. They tried to use the pandemic. And they were hoping that as people suffered, as the economy imploded, and things got worse and worse, people wouldn't care where the private Western central bank brought the entire world. The problem that they're having right now is that they don't have this cover story. They don't have any of this. And now the countries, the people in the countries, they can see what they're trying to do. And there is no reason why they have to go along with it. Actually, since there is no destruction, since the economy is not imploding, since we don't have a tremendous amount of loss of life, and people are okay, people and businesses are opening up, and countries are still functioning, their entire plan, I'm talking about the private Western central bank, their entire plan to bring us into a great reset, climate change, is not working. The countries around the world are not going to go along with it. Yes, there's going to be certain countries that are already in line with this, but there's going to be other countries that are going to say, we're not going to be a part of this. And this is going to be a problem with the private Western central bank. Now, out in Switzerland, they are not going along with the climate regulations, with the Great Reset. In a referendum, the Swiss voters nixed a trio of expensive environmental proposals, including a carbon tax, an artificial pesticide ban, and a redirection of subsidies to farmers who no longer use pesticides. Many of the Swiss voters appear to have been worried about the impact on the economy as the country tries to recover from COVID. So they don't have loss of life, their buildings aren't destroyed, the economy isn't imploded, and they can see exactly what the private Western central bankers are trying to do. The same thing here in the United States. Why do you think they're having a very difficult time selling this to the people? The people aren't buying it. Same thing that's happening around the world. Yes, there's going to be a few countries that are still in line with this, especially out in Europe, but most of the countries are going to reject this. And it's already begun. And this is going to continue. Because you have to remember what the Patriots have done here. They countered their plan. They removed the wars. They removed the pandemic. And now the private Western central bank and the elites, their entire plan is completely exposed to the world. And the world is starting to catch on in what they're trying to do here. Now, we know that their system, and I'm talking about the private Western central bank system, we know that it is falling apart. They've known this for a very long time. Why do you think they want these cover stories? Why do you think they want loss of life, destruction, an economy that is imploding? This way, they're not to blame. But they don't have this now. But they're trying to explain to the world why all of this is happening. And it's going to get harder and harder for them to explain it. Just because they give you a percentage of inflation, and they say, well, it ticked up to 3% and we're going to bring it back to 2.5%. People see it a different way. They're not really paying attention to their ridiculous percentages. Because when you go to the gas pump, when you pay for food, when you see how much a house is worth, when you're trying to pay for everyday items, that's when people notice the inflation. They don't say, hey, wow, 3%. Now I really can see it. No, they see it every day. The everyday person who is going to work, who is spending their money, they can see it every single day. They see it in their bills, when you have to pay for electric, when you have to pay for gas. They see it with auto insurance. They see it with their car payments. They see it with their house insurance. They see it with all of this. As these items move up, people say, well, wait a minute. Now I have less money. I can see the inflation. Doesn't matter if the Federal Reserve says, don't worry about it. It's still at 2%. People don't believe it. When they go to the supermarket and they purchase food, and last week their food bill was, let's say, $150. This week it's $170. They notice that when they pick up an item and it's shrunk down and it made it look like it's the same size, or they're giving you the same amount of napkins or paper towels or crackers or whatever it is, people see the difference. The private Western Central Bank, the fake news, they can tell people that it's not happening, but people see it. They feel it every single day. You don't think people feel the increase in gasoline prices? Of course they do. Yeah, the central bank could tell you it's not a big deal. The fake news could tell you it's not a big deal, but people feel it every single day. When you have less and less money every single day, people realize it. And it doesn't matter if they tell you inflation is transitory or there is no inflation. You know that there is inflation. Just go back to 1970. Do items cost the same amount? No, they don't. Why? Because the dollar devalued. It's not because the apple went up in price. It's because the currency lost its value. That's why we're seeing this. And yes, when you go back in time, you can see it very clearly. Actually, today, it's happening so quickly that people are noticing and they're understanding what is happening. And this is something the private Western Central Bank cannot stop. So they can't stop the countries now from rejecting their plan. They can't stop the people from noticing. And they're running into a problem. Now, if you noticed, the central bankers, they're right on cue. Remember, they don't want people to notice that their currency is devaluing. So what do? They have to hit those things that reflect on their fiat system. What would that be? Gold, silver, cryptocurrency. What happened to gold? Did it go over 1900? Is it 2000 now? Or did we say when it hit 1900, they were going to take action and they were going to push it down? That's exactly what they did. Why? Because if they allowed gold to move up to 2000, 2200, 2500, 3000, people would be questioning the fiat system. Someone would talk to someone else. Other people would talk to other people. And then the word would start getting around. And as that continually moved up, or actually the dollar is devaluing, people would say, okay, there's a problem here. What move should I make now? This is something they don't want you to see. And they're probably going to try to suppress all of this until the very, very end, which is actually an opportunity for every single person. Cryptocurrency is a little bit harder for them to suppress. If you notice, they couldn't bring it all the way back down to $6,000 or $5,000 or even $500. They tried multiple times with information. They might try again. I wouldn't be surprised. But look what happens. It starts to move up again. It hit 40,000 once again. It's very close to 40,000 once again. Remember, it's 40,000 Federal Reserve notes to buy one Bitcoin. It's 1,700 and change Federal Reserve notes to buy 1 ounce of gold. That's how you see inflation. It's right there. If you want to take it down to the level of food, fuel, and everything else, you could take it down to that level. But they know that these are indicators. They know that they can't allow this to break free because it would destroy their entire system. Now, what's very interesting is that the House Republicans, they're now going to accept Bitcoin donations. If you notice, there are more and more financial institutions, there are more and more businesses now accepting alternative currency. Why is that? Because these institutions, they understand what's happening. They realize it. And they're preparing for it. Remember, in the end, they want to survive. They don't want to implode. They want to make sure they stay on top of the game. And if the fiat system is being destroyed, they want to make sure that they're still in business and they're still making money somehow, some way. Because if they lose all their clients and they lose everything, their business is done. And this is why we're going to see a lot more financial institutions, a lot more businesses allow people to use an alternative currency. This is how it begins. When you use an alternative currency and you're being paid in an alternative currency, you're outside of the private Western central bank system. Private Western central bankers can't control or they can't monitor what you do. Just like if you held gold and silver in your home in a safe, they can't monitor that. They have no clue. They can monitor your electronic funds in your bank account, but they cannot monitor your cryptocurrency. This is why on the tax forms they asked a very, very specific question. They asked, have you purchased cryptocurrency? Have you sold cryptocurrency? Why would they have to ask that? It's almost like asking, do you own a weapon? The reason they ask these questions is because they don't know. And they don't need to know, do they? Because if they knew everything, they wouldn't have to ask. See, with the bank, which is tied into the IRS, tied into the Federal Reserve, they could always find out because they have access to all of it. With gold and silver, cryptocurrency, they have a much more difficult time because you're outside of their system. They don't like people outside of their system. They don't like people going around and conducting business outside of their system. Remember, when you get taxed on any type of investment, it's when you turn it back into their fiat currency. Like if you purchase a home, which is property, when your house moves up in price, do you have to pay for the appreciation? No, not until you sell, until you exchange it for their fiat dollars. Same thing with gold and silver and crypto. If people went out there and they started to use separate currency outside of the private Western central bank system, and you never turn it into the fiat system, what do? They can't really do that much. And this is what they're afraid of. This is their biggest fear, of having a country, a people, using a different system, just like El Salvador. Now there's a competing currency against the Federal Reserve note. Because people now can say, you know something? Look how cryptocurrency is appreciating, because when I go to the store, I see that cryptocurrency moved up a little bit and the prices of the food went up, which means I just lost value with the Federal Reserve note, but I gained value with cryptocurrency. Which is better to have? And people are going to see this very, very clearly as time goes on. Once gold and silver and everything starts to break free, and we're going to see that, people are going to see it very, very clearly. And those people who see it way ahead of time, they will make out a lot better than those who are waiting until the very, very end. Just like when people thought gold was going back to, 1,050 to 700 to 600, and it never went there. Actually, it just moved up. The same thing with cryptocurrency. People think it's going to go to zero. It's not going to go to zero because people understand what it is. People understand that it's a currency that you can use. Remember, currencies around the world, they're backed by what today? Are they backed by gold? Or is it just backed by the government telling you that this is the currency? It's called confidence. If the Federal Reserve note lost confidence today, people would no longer use it. People would no longer believe in it. People would use something different. That's what they're hanging on to right now, is the confidence of the people in this world. Once confidence is eroded, and people lose this confidence in their currency, or I should say the private Western central bank's currency, and they decide to move someplace else, that's it with the currency. There's nothing that they can do. They're done for. That's why I keep saying, in the end, the people will make the decision of where we're going to go. Because the people hold the confidence. The people decide this is worth something, that is not. And once people decide and they say, you know something, we don't want to use this anymore, it is not worth anything, we're going to use this, this is worth something to us, that's when we make the switch. That's when everything changes. And I do believe that day is coming. The people, the patriots, always in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.